We live?
Yes,
We're live, okay, thank you. I'd like to welcome you to the council meeting of May 15th, 2023. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to start with the playing of the national anthem. Buddy Rice?
Hold on one second. Sorry.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Carton bras et porter le pays, il sait porter la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Grimsby is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawin-Daronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Haudenosaunee, including the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis, Inuit people from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The regional municipality of Niagara and Grimsby stand with all the Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. Thank you. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary or non-pecuniary interests? Okay, seeing none. Prior to approving the agenda, I'm taking the opportunity to advise the public that council will move into closed session to consider a confidential matter. Council will be back in approximately 30 minutes to continue the meeting. So if I can ask the audience to leave the room. Thank you. Okay. May I have a mover and a seconder to move into closed session? Councillor Howe, Councillor Devoli. You got it? Okay. Okay. Resolve that council meet in closed session under section 23(9)(2)(f) of the Municipal Act, where a closed meeting is held if the subject matter being considered is advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. You vote?
Yeah.
All in favor? Carried. Are we in close?
No, not yet. No.
Okay, now you're good.
Okay, we're back.
Are we back in open?
Yes, we are.
Okay, welcome back to open session. I need a mover and seconder for the closed session motion. I need a mover and a seconder for the closed session motion. Moved by Councillor Chouat and Councillor Howe. Resolve that staff proceed as directed in closed session. All in favor? Carried. Okay. I'm just reading your red. I'm just reading red. I need a mover and seconder to approve the open agenda. Moved by Councillor DeFlavio, Councillor Vardy. Resolve that the May 15, 2023 council meeting agenda be approved. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so we now move to delegations. First up is Christine Giordani, is that correct? Welcome, Christine. And Christine's going to speak to Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act.
A PowerPoint.
So you can go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. I think I had a PowerPoint presentation, if that's okay. Okay, good evening, Council. My name is Dr. Christine Giordani, and I'm here representing the Women of Ontario Say No, a collaboration of men, women, people, organizations, and groups that care deeply about basic human rights in the workplace. In this case, protection of the right not to be harassed by an elected member of council. In March of 2021, Orleans member of provincial Parliament, Stephen Blais, put forward a bill, the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act. The bill was brought forward to introduce legislation that would deter municipal councillors and board members from engaging in harassment by holding them accountable for their actions, including creating a process to remove them from office. The bill requires that codes of conduct for municipal councillors and members of local boards include requirements for those councillors and members to comply with workplace violence and harassment policies, and creates an integrity commissioner and judicial process to remove them from office for egregious acts of sexual, emotional, and psychological misconduct. The bill was reintroduced in October of last year as Bill 10. In his address to the House, Mr. Blais conveyed the urgency to prioritize and pass this legislation before the most recent provincial election to ensure it was in full effect prior to the upcoming municipal elections. The legislation died on the floor when the provincial election was called and has since been reintroduced as Bill 5 in August. It is nonpartisan and had all party support. If the legislation had passed, it may have affected who was able to run in this most recent election, a change that would have supported candidates that had baseline personal conduct of not perpetrating egregious acts of harassment to municipal staff or fellow colleagues. If you could just change the slide. There's a second one there. Thank you. There are so many people that serve the public. There's so many good people that serve the public as elected representatives. However, like every sector, there are people who are guilty of perpetrating harassment in the workplace. One does not have to look far to find examples such as Barrie, Ottawa, Mississauga, and Brampton that were cited by MPP Blais as to why this legislation is so necessary. In fact, the number of examples have only increased since the bill was last on the floor. In every other workplace in Ontario, employees are held to violence and harassment in the workplace policies. Currently, there are no legislation There is no legislation that provides an appropriate mechanism for accountability for municipally elected representatives when it comes to perpetrating harassment. In any other job, if egregious acts of harassment is substantiated, the person is fired. In the present, not only can an elected representative perpetrate harassment, no matter how egregious, they can retain their position and seek re-election. This is not acceptable. You can change the slide again. Thank you. The bill is simple. It has two primary components. Number one, hold municipally elected officials to violence and harassment policies of the municipality they serve. And two, create a process by which the Integrity Commissioner can apply to the courts to vacate a position for substantiated acts of egregious harassment. All claims need to be substantiated like any other workplace, HR department, and only in those instances where harassment was deemed egregious would an application to the courts be made for removal. If removed, the person would not be eligible to pursue subsequent re-election or be appointed to the council or local board. This is the same consequence applied to the candidates who fail to file a financial statement for their election campaign. It is hard to stand here and try to rationalize how a lack of financial disclosure warrants penalty while councillors guilty of egregious harassment can pursue re-election carte blanche. Something is wrong with this picture. My last slide, please. Yeah. Today, we're here to advocate for your support of your workplace safety. As elected leaders of your community, you are responsible for ensuring basic human rights are respected and protected. This bill is the foundation. We are asking Council to pass a motion to endorse Bill 5 and to write a letter of support circulated to your local MPP, Premier Doug Ford, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Steve Clark, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and the MPP for Orleans, Stephen Blais. I'm happy to report that should Council choose to pass this motion, they will be joining the 102 other municipalities who have endorsed this, including 7 upper-tier municipalities, of which Niagara Region is among them. Every voice matters. We look to you, elected officials, of your communities to do just that, to lead. Please join these municipalities in standing up for the human rights of every person in your province. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Are there any questions around Councillor Chouat?
Through you, Chair, thank you. I'm just wondering if you've had any feedback as far as if you could extend this to also to CAOs with ombudsmans as well, because there's it's a similar situation with that, with those protections. So I'm just wondering for egregious acts, whether that could also be included?
Yeah, that's good feedback.
Okay. I would like to support this. I don't know if we need to vote on this, you know?
There is a resolution coming. Councillor Cristangi.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you very much for coming tonight. I've read about Bill 5, and I've actually spoken a little bit with somebody from the Women of Ontario Say No. I think it's much needed. I think we definitely could have used it last term. I believe that this is a workplace. I believe that the same conditions on harassment and sexual harassment and stuff like that should apply. So thank you very much for taking the time and coming today.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I'll read. I need a mover and a seconder to get a motion of support for Bill 5 on the floor. I think Councillor Chouat, Councillor Davoli, or DeFlavio, sorry. You got that? DeFlavio. Okay, I'm going to read this long motion. Whereas municipally elected leaders do not have an appropriate accountability structure when it comes to perpetrating violence and harassment in the workplace, and whereas a fundamental underlying principle of broadening diversity, equity, and inclusion in politics rests on the assumption that the workplace is safe, and whereas Bill 5, the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, would require councillors to comply with the workplace violence and harassment policies of the municipality they represent, and whereas Bill 5 permits municipalities to direct the Integrity Commissioner to apply to the court to vacate a member's seat for failing to comply with the municipality's workplace violence and harassment policies, as well as restrict officials whose seat has been vacated from seeking immediate subsequent re-election, and whereas over 102 municipalities have formally endorsed and communicated public support for Bill 5, and whereas Bill 5 would both hold accountable and protect all municipal officials. Now therefore be it resolved that Grimsby Council express its support for Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, and be it further resolved that this resolution be circulated to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, Sam Oosterhoff, MPP for Niagara West, Dean Allison, MP for Niagara West, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Christine. Sorry, the next delegation is Stephen Zeus. He has a presentation on the state of emergency declaration for the town of Grimsby. Stephen is attending virtually, I believe. Are you out there, Stephen?
He is on here.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, loud and clear. You're on. Go ahead.
Okay, if someone can turn on the video, that would be preferable too. There we go. Okay, I'm outside, but I hope everyone can see me, do my best. I hope everyone can hear me. So I'm here tonight to talk about a follow-up to Niagara Region's declaration of a state of emergency for mental health, homelessness, and addiction. Now, as you may know, and I had an opportunity to talk to a few of the councillors beforehand and introduce myself, this has been a 4-year journey for myself, and Wayne Campbell, Niagara Falls City Councilor, came on board as well, introducing the original motion for the request for Niagara Region to declare a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. So I have been fighting for this initiative since 2019. So you can imagine the excitement that I experienced when I seen municipalities like Hamilton declaring, and I went to their Board of Health to push for that, to get the emergency on the agenda. Toronto, City of Toronto declaring a homelessness emergency, the largest municipality, certainly in Ontario, and, you know, representing well over 2 million people, well over, closer to 2.5. So, you know, this what turned into an emergency movement born right here in Niagara has evolved in what I view as a human rights movement, a national human rights movement for mental health, homelessness, and addiction. In fact, this morning, I had the pleasure of attending the Niagara Falls Casino, and I met Trish Stratus, 7-time WWE Women's Champion. And we asked a question through True Politics about the state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, addiction to Trish Stratus. And she was very interested in speaking with Mayor Diodati. She answered, said she was very interested in speaking to Mayor Diodati about the emergency. And she talked about how WWE supports initiatives like this, mental health, and how she supports it as a celebrity and a superstar. So we have taken the state of emergency advocacy to the next level. And tonight, Grimsby Council, I have a motion for you. And that this motion is to fight for the $4.5 billion that the federal government has promised in provincial transfers last campaign for mental health that we never got. Niagara should get their allocation of that money, and we should see the federal government supporting this emergency. Even though jurisdiction lies as a provincial public health emergency, it does not mean that the federal government cannot take actions on the housing file, on the addiction file, on the mental health file, and on the finance file to release this mental health money that will ultimately can be divided Canadian municipalities. So we have FCM and AMO copied on the motion. We're asking MPP Sam Oosterhoff to approach the appropriate cabinet ministers provincially and MP Dean Allison federally to talk about the priorities identified in this motion. Tonight, Grimsby follows suit with Niagara Region in a stand of unity with St. Catharines, with Niagara Falls, with Thorold. And we, declare an emergency on mental health, addiction, and housing affordability. You know, I see so many new faces in Grimsby Council. Councillor Jacob, I'm looking at you right now. We had a great conversation, and it's time for the young people to rise up, Councillor Jacob, and we got to do something about this. So let's do something about this tonight, Councillor Jacob, and let's pass this motion, guys, and let's show that we're serious about Niagara, folks. We are the advocates for the entire province and for the entire country. I thank you for your time. Please ask me lots of questions on this matter. I literally lecture on it at Brock University. I am not shy. Thank you very much for your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Stephen. That was a very emotional, and we do have a motion based on your delegation, which we'll bring forward shortly. But before I do...
I'm not rusty. I'm not rusty.
That's, I gather that. I'm just going to ask the council if they have any questions of you before I read the motion.
Absolutely.
Councillor DeFlavio.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Stephen. Stephen, so besides the resolution, which is just writing, from our perspective, and it's a support for what you have to say, what else can municipalities do to help bring attention to the issues that you're talking about?
It's a very good question. So right now, I'm a Métis person on my mother's side. That's my maternal grandfather. So right now, I am working with Mayor Wayne Redekop in Fort Erie and the Ontario Friendship Center for an Indigenous mobile mental health crisis unit for Niagara that will ultimately work towards also rerouting calls from police on these matters to healthcare professionals where they properly belong. We still want the police to be a part of that greater team, but we certainly want to see less responses because the responses have increased for mental health for police by well over 200%. We have to take stress off the police here. There are frontline heroes along with paramedics and firefighters in these kind of issues and in these kind of situations. So that's one thing. Making more Indigenous wellness literature and literature on mental wellness and addiction and literature on homelessness available through your local libraries. That is a great thing, and a simple thing that municipalities can take action on. Ultimately, some municipalities like St. Catharines, I'm working on speaking with them to have a bylaw banning hostile architecture of the homeless. So there are many, many, many things municipalities can do. They can advocate to the province and the federal government. One thing that I'm really pushing for is private rehab rooms, more rehab facilities in Niagara using the emergency legislation provincially that says in a declared emergencies that the government can establish facilities of care and procure resources to those facilities of care. Councillor Reg, I was going somewhere with this. They should have listened to me for 4 years. I was going somewhere with this. So,
You're doing very well.
This speaks to our hospitals, Councillor Reg. This speaks to building more rehab, building more LTC for Niagara. This is our magic provision in the legislation. We have the declaration of emergency. Grimsby Council, tonight, stand with us and declare this emergency. I have 30 recommendations I've submitted to Niagara Falls Council and Councillor, and I would be happy to share that with the greater council. And I appreciate the question. I look forward to the next one if there is one.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other questions? Councillor Sirois.
Through you, Chair. I absolutely agree that we should declare this a state of emergency. My only issue is, because I do recognize, and I have had personal experiences also with people that have been suffering. My only issue with this motion is the details. So, like even when we're looking at the hospital, providing more money to the hospital, do we know that the hospital has the resources, that they have the size in order to accommodate, so some of those, it's the details that I have some issues with. I'd also like to make sure that Child Protective Services is also involved in the discussions. I would personally like to be involved in these discussions if that was an option as well. So I would like to give my support for acknowledging that work needs to be done, but it's just the details that I would kind of want fine-tuned.
May I respond to that, Chair?
Sure.
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry.
Okay, so I just want to start by thanking the counselor, and I myself, of course, as you may have read in the press, have lived experience on mental health, homelessness, and addiction, and I've also been a developmental support worker supporting those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And let me tell you, you know, that is a sector that needs the support for their housing-related services, their residential services, and they're being grossly neglected, and they're not being mentioned. But just to the counselor, when we're talking about the money that would come for this, for the funding of the hospital, we're talking about the upper echelons of government, because we are referring to a Provincial Emergency Management Civil Protection Act, which is where the provisions are outlined. Now, this covers everything from renovations to actual procurement of resources. When I say that, the resources can be services, i.e. mental health workers, putting full mental health and addiction services in a hospital that serves a different catchment area, which is Niagara West, that is under Hamilton Health Sciences, not like Niagara Health System. So we can do this, and we can identify and meet and have conversations exactly what the hospital needs. But as identified in the motion, MPP Osterhoff is identified in the motion of approaching the appropriate ministries to discuss the priorities outlined in this motion. So I'm not leaving anybody, everyone knows about my advocacy, that it's strong, and I don't abandon the counselors who want to advocate with me. And we work as a collective, as an Indigenous community, for example, and I want to work with Grimsby Council and all other municipalities on these issues and on questions like the counselor just had. I thank her for a very intelligent question.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to allow Councillor Barazzi to speak next, because I think he's the one that brought this motion. So go ahead.
Thank you, Chair, through you. To anyone that ever said you can't express passion through a Zoom meeting, I think you just proved them wrong. I definitely stand with you on this. I think there's a lot more Grimsby can do for mental health services. And also one thing that you would potentially, if you're willing to maybe add to it too, is maybe factoring the housing affordability into the same motion. I kind of think it goes hand in hand with mental health, homelessness, and addiction. I think it kind of goes.
I amended the language from homelessness to housing affordability, just because we want to be accurate, and they are two very different files. And of course, Welland, St. Catharines, and Niagara Falls homelessness always looks different, of course. Grimsby may have situations of quasi-homelessness. I know there was information about one individual, but other than that, I want to change the language to housing affordability, because that has been the challenge, especially for seniors and young people who should be coming together on these issues as well. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to clarify before you go on, Councillor.
That's all right. I just was going to continue expressing support, and just wanted to make one more statement here. And to anyone in Grimsby who's ever had lost someone to addiction, I'm very happy to do anything we can to help prevent that from happening anymore. So.
Absolutely. And I think any of these counselors sitting at this table, bring your recommendations, support each other, take each other's advice as friendly amendments, and let's build a strong team, because we've seen Niagara's advocacy so far. I got a response from the Deputy Prime Minister. I've been getting responses from cabinet ministers. It's unreal. If you don't ask, you don't get an answer. So let's ask. And I also outlined the domestic abuse shelter for Niagara West, because District 8 is experiencing a extremely high volume of calls. It's, from last I spoke to an officer, it's their second highest call volume. Of course, we can use the provision I mentioned to ask for an emergency shelter for domestic abuse. No one should be stuck in that position with no transportation options and being forced to go to Hamilton or St. Catharines, where they don't have knowledge of that community and such. They should have support right in Niagara West. I add, that's a very important thing. I've been somebody as a child who was sexually assaulted, who was domestically abused my entire life. So I definitely I definitely identify with the priorities of the domestic abuse shelter outlined in that motion, and I know there's a lot of flavor for that in Niagara West.
Thank you again. Councillor Howe, I believe you had your hand up.
Through you, Chair. Stephen, I mean, everything, and I've read it, agree with you, and I can appreciate it. But we're mentioning addiction, I think it's mentioned about 4 times or 5 times. But what about the animals that sell the fentanyls and those sophisticated, not sophisticated, but.
Sorry, I think we're a little bit off base there.
Well,
Yeah.
it's animals. These are murderers that are
Yeah.
flogging this stuff out there. How
No,
are we
we
going
have,
to
no,
get
sorry,
those
sorry,
people?
no.
Okay.
Well, let me tackle the.
Ken, no, I think I want to strike that one, Stephen, for now. Thank you.
Well, I was just going to move it to.
I just want to move ahead with this.
Okay, no problem, Chair.
Okay, so thank you. Sorry, I do have a resolution here, and, sorry, Councillor Varney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. That's you're very passionate about this, and I appreciate that, and we spoke about it. And I want to support you, but I honestly believe that this motion needs tweaking before I can support it. So there's just aspects of it that are just a little more complicated than the way it's written, in terms of the kinds of agreements that we've had, the money that we've got from the province for the hospital, the money that we've got from Niagara Region for the hospital. I just would feel more comfortable if we could do a draft with the same intent, but maybe with it's some of the details in there I'm not comfortable with. But I feel badly because I can't support the motion, but I do want to support what you're trying to do. And I will support a revised motion, but I think it really needs to be taken away and worked on. And, I don't know if you know, but, my whole background is in public health. I'm very sympathetic to what you're saying. My whole family carries naloxone in their cars. I insist that my husband, myself, and my son carry naloxone kits in our cars. I mean, I'm quite familiar with the problem, and I know it's not always a visible problem, and I want to do something, but I just think that this motion needs a bit of tweaking.
May I respond to that, Chair? Because I would like to just answer the councillor's point.
So I don't want to get into a debate here, but just keep it.
It won't be.
Go ahead.
So, I just want to say, Councillor, that I hear your concerns. I understand your concerns, but when you talk directly to the families impacted, including my own, of mental health, homelessness, and addiction, they get real frustrated when they hear this needs tweaking, this needs a report. I too have been a public health advocate for 4 years, and I believe that there is nothing that we can't do. I don't think that this interferes with any agreements because those agreements in place. But let me tell you what I have found out from this state of emergency. I have found out that when we got the homelessness money for $20.8 million, they made up for that money. We got that amount of money because previous governments implemented homelessness programs and agreements with the region, and we never got the cash for them. So we can talk about agreements and programs all day long, but as I go back to the point, Councillor, if you don't ask, you don't get an answer. Everything prioritized in this motion is important to the people of Grimsby, is important to the people of Niagara West, is important to the people of Niagara. And I don't want to stifle the opportunity or the chance for us to get full mental health and addiction services in West Lincoln Memorial Hospital. I say we take the chance. And Councillor, it's your council, Chair and Council, but I encourage you to move this motion tonight and make a statement for the rest of the region. Municipalities already follow the emergency plans of the region. So town of Grimsby would follow the emergency plan of the Niagara region anyway. That's outlined in the provincial emergency legislation. We have several cabinet ministers involved who are interested in helping, who I've even spoken to personally. I think we need to go on this motion. Thank you, Councillor, for your concerns. I hope I cleared some of them.
Well, thank you, Stephen, but I'm just going to say sometimes the devil's in the details, and sometimes it's better maybe to leave some details out that you'll be more likely to be successful. I feel strongly about that, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Councillor Kristanji, yes.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Stephen, I love your passion. I want to say thank you for bringing notice to hard topics that we don't typically talk about in small towns. We know these problems exist. We know we don't have adequate services. Those of us affected directly really know that. And these are hard topics to talk about, to admit to having those issues. So I really appreciate your enthusiasm and your passion for creating change. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor.
I think we have one. Councillor DeVoe, I think you were next. You were last, actually. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair Frake. I wanted to say to Stephen that my family too has been impacted by this. Had a family member who passed away because the drugs they took were laced with fentanyl.
Yeah.
And so your resolution hit very close to home. When I read the resolution, I too felt like there was a lot in it. And so at first, as I'm hearing my fellow councillors talk about the detail in there and so on, I'm thinking, yes, we need to fix the resolution a bit and do this and do that. But truly, at the end of the day, we just need to move forward on it. And this resolution is very encompassing. Some things will come true, some will not. Some we will be able to do, we'll have success in some areas and some not. But most importantly, we need to move forward with it. And so for those reasons, I unequivocally support it.
Councillor, I wish I was here. I wish I was in the chambers, Chair Reg, to hug the councillor right now for sharing her story. That takes strength. I've been there, Councillor. You are so brave and courageous for what you did. I think Councillor should clap for them, because I'm going to clap for you. So I really appreciate you. And, Councillor DeVoley is a very intelligent individual. If you've seen her designs that she's done in graphic design, she's incredibly talented. And I just want to say that. I noticed your graphic design abilities. So, definitely wanted to mention that when I got the chance to address you, Councillor.
Thank you. The last word will go to Councillor Sherwa.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Councillor Vardy said exactly how I was feeling, what I was feeling as well, as far as the details. So it's absolutely, I support it. It's just the details of the motion that I have a problem with, just because it's not as strong, and I feel like there's just some parts that you need clarification, and we don't want to ask for things that we know we're not going to get. So I'm wondering if we could maybe do a friendly amendment here, like stating that we support the emergency motion, but maybe not get into the details about, the hospital and all of that, but basically okaying the discussions.
This is Councillor Barotzi's motion, so I'll ask him if he wants to consider that or not.
Yeah, I would
Because
consider that as a
the
friendly
motion is,
amendment.
it's on the floor now.
Yeah, I think it's close enough that we can make a couple friendly amendments and get it passed tonight.
Yeah.
Bonnie, where do we start? Do we go with this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would suggest you start with this. However, are you just saying to add support for the motion generally and then take it back? Is that what you were asking?
I'm asking for us to support the emergency, but take out the details, and support discussions for how we're going. Pardon? The details about, like the hospital, the town of Grimsby requests more funding for West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, so that the hospital may be fully staffed, functional hospital with built-in mental health and addiction services. That's just one part. But and then there's also about the Niagara West shelter.
Okay, this is going to be a totally different new motion, what you're talking about.
I think I think that part needs to go, all the details, because we don't know what actions need to happen in order to help this situation. So we need to have discussions with these people, everybody mentioned here, to come up with the plan.
I do think these are all valid reasons to ask the province for funding, though. So whether,
Can I ask Stephen a question? Is this the exact same motion that the other municipalities passed?
So there was the recommendation of 30 to Niagara Falls. Most of these priorities are outlined in the Niagara Falls motion. And then as this issue is fast developing, we added things to the motion, especially with that provision of being able to build and procure resource facilities of care. But I asked the councillors who had some comments around the hospital if they would accept, and the Councillor Jacob for moving the motion, if they would accept that the town of Grimsby advocate to the province for mental health and addiction services Memorial Hospital. If the language can be amended as that, then that's great. I'm not willing to back down on domestic shelter. That's a priority and important, so that's up to council. But for me personally, that's priority. It's needed, and there are women out there and
So if we
people
go with
such
the
as
original
myself
motion
and
that was
others
passed in
who are,
the municipalities.
suffering with these
You need a break, right?
issues. So I don't want to back down.
Is that a break?
Yeah, because I don't know what.
Stephen, yeah, would you be, I don't know, would you be okay with going with the original motion that was passed by the other municipalities?
I would be okay that as long, we can take the hospital stuff out if that's gonna be the main decider of the whole motion, but we have to make sure, just to clarify, we're declaring an emergency at the town.
No, I understand that. Just before we, I think we're going to have to take a 5-minute break, but just before we do, I'm going to let Councillor Vardy, Councillor Vardy has a,
Niagara West.
Councillor Vardy, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make a motion to defer, because if we try to wordsmith this in 5 minutes, we're not going to achieve something that's as strong as we want it to be. So what I'd like to do is defer this motion to the next meeting. And Councillor, I'm happy to work with Councillor Bradzi to bring back a revised motion and we can look at what some of the other motions are, where we can have this in a state where we can pass it, and no doubt pass it unanimously. But I think wordsmithing on the fly for something as important as this is not a great idea. So I'd like to defer this motion until the next meeting, which will give us time to do a revision and present it. So I have a motion to defer on the floor.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to defer, and
So we have to hear my motion.
so can I get can I get, no, at this point, we need a show of hands, right?
Yep.
So we need a show of hands for, yes, deferral. Let's take a,
Just 3.
is it only 3?
You can.
So the deferral's defeated?
Yep.
Yes, deferral's defeated? What are we next?
You have to call the question.
Okay.
But you're going to need a seconder.
Sure.
I have Councillor Barazzi and Councillor DeVoli as a mover and a seconder, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Should we deal with that now? So we're going to deal with this motion.
Did you come speak?
Yeah, can
Did you want-
can
sorry,
I call
Councillor
the
Bratz, go
question
ahead.
for the motion as it is.
Okay, call the question. So I'm going to read it. It is great length, so bear with me.
This is Stephen Seuss motion. I apologize.
It's okay. Whereas the Niagara region, City of St. Catharines, City of Thorold, City of Niagara Falls, City of Welland, and City of Hamilton have declared states of emergencies on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. And whereas the declaration of the emergency and a fix to the provincial funding allocation for homelessness resulted in a $20.8 million investment for homelessness prevention in Niagara, resulting in a $9.6 million increase for Niagara. And whereas lower-tier municipalities follow the emergency plans of the upper-tier government, the Niagara region, Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act of 1990. And whereas travel to other cities for services continues to be a challenge for several residents in Grimsby, whereas there has been a dramatic increase of domestic abuse in Niagara West, according to District 8 NRP, Niagara Regional Police, with it now being the second highest call volume in Grimsby, and whereas the Canadian economy lost $50 million a year in losses due to the issues of mental health and $40 billion per year in losses due to substance abuse. And whereas the Provincial Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act reads, the Lieutenant Governor in Council by emergency order may establishing the facilities for the care, welfare, safety, and shelter of individuals, including emergency shelters and hospitals, and can procure the necessary resources to those facilities of care and welfare, safety, and shelter of individuals. Therefore, be it resolved that Grimsby Council declare a state of emergency and crisis on mental health, addiction, and housing affordability. Be it further resolved that the town of Grimsby requests more funding for the West Lincoln Memorial Hospital, so that the hospital may be a fully staffed, functional hospital with a built-in mental health and addiction services. Be it further resolved that the town of Grimsby advocate for the establishment of an emergency domestic abuse shelter servicing Niagara West and research interested organizations willing to deliver this service locally. Be it further resolved that the town of Grimsby request that Sam Oosterhoff, MPP for Niagara West, approach the provincial ministers Michael Kirchner, Solicitor General, Michael Tabolo, Associate Minister, Mental Health and Addiction, Sylvia Jones of Health, Steve Clark, Municipal Affairs and Housing, to discuss assistance for the priorities identified in this motion. Be it further resolved that Grimsby Town Council request to the Federal Treasury Board President Mona Fortier, Finance Minister and Deputy Canadian Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland, to immediately release the federal funds as provincial transfers promised by their government in the sum of $4.5 billion, and that Grimsby Town Council advocate for Niagara's allocation of this previously promised mental health money by the federal government. Be it further resolved that the town of Grimsby request MP Dean Allison to approach the federal ministers Carolyn Bennett of Mental Health and Addictions, Ahmed Hussein, Diversity and Housing, Chrystia Freeland, the Finance, and Mona Fortier, Treasury Board, to request federal support for Niagara Region's emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. Be it further resolved that all Niagara area municipalities, all Niagara area MPs, Stephen Zeus, Niagara Health System, Hamilton Health MPP, Sarah Gemma, Hamilton MP, Matthew Green, City of Hamilton AMO, FCM, Niagara Regional Police Chief, Provincial and Federal Ministers of Housing, Provincial and Federal Ministers of Health, Grimsby and District Chamber of Commerce, GBF Community Services in Grimsby, YWCA Niagara, Hamilton Health Sciences, Greg Fergus of MP of Parliamentary Secretary, Canada, Mona Fortier, President, Canada Treasury Board, Stephanie Kuzi, critic for the Federal Treasury Board, Federal Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, Federal Minister of Mental Health and Addiction, Carolyn Bennett, Parliamentary Secretary for Mental Health and Addictions, Elizabeth Breer, Parliamentary Secretary for Mental Health and Addictions, Todd Doherty, critic for Mental Health and Addictions be copied on the resolution. Recorded vote.
Winded.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor DeFlavio.
In favor.
Councillor Charrois.
Yes.
Councillor Howe.
No.
Councillor DeVoley,
Yes.
Councillor Baratzi,
Yes.
Councillor Corstanzi,
Yes.
Councillor Vardy,
Yes.
and Chair Frake.
Yes.
And that's carried.
You're all amazing.
Congratulations, Stephen. Thank you. Great, passionate.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Great moment.
Next delegation is Stacey McNeil, regarding the Planning and Development Committee meeting time. Stacey, you're on stage. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and councilors, for taking the time to listen to my presentation. Today, as I speak to you, I feel a certain sense of symmetry. Last time I spoke before council, it was immediately after the final vote had been taken to roll out the Committee of the Whole system. Now I'm bookending my last appearance to basically send the same message: reconsider. Thankfully, this council has shifted the approval of minutes to item 11.2, so unlike Don Quixote, this time I'll not be tilting at windmills with the decision already confirmed. Council has an opportunity to take a moment of sober second thought and put the people of Grimsby not necessarily first, but put on a level playing field with the Planning and Development Committee members, its staff, and developers, simply by setting a time when more of them could attend meetings. On May 2nd, the Planning and Development Committee met to decide, among other things, meeting start times and days. Meeting start times were set at 5 p.m. These start times appear to work well for the following groups: committee members, planning and development staff members, and developers and their staff members. For committee members, an early start likely means an earlier finished meetings. Few would find fault with this decision, considering some of the previous Planning and Development Standing Committee meetings where contentious issues were debated could last well past the normal 11 p.m. cutoff time. Others may remember when planning and development issues were debated under the Committee of the Whole system, and these combined meetings could last until 1 a.m. Under those circumstances, planning and development staff may have been required to remain available throughout these long meetings. As the committee did, it is commendable to consider staff time outside normal working hours and attempt to reduce those burdensome requests. As for developers, bringing proposals to committee meetings, often they must bring a large contingent of staff to support these proposals, something which would start the meetings earlier would mean less overtime pay that they'd have to fork out and less disruption to the lives of their staff members as well. So seems like everybody should be happy. The start time proposal seems like a win-win-win proposition for everybody. But let's pause. We've forgotten about one group who have turned out to be substantial losers in this situation. The committee has neglected to consider the average Grimsby resident, taxpayer, and elector. Just as some committee members have daytime jobs, many Grimsby citizens also have daytime jobs. A 5 o'clock start cuts into their normal workday and does not easily allow for contributions without the need to take time off work or disruptively arrive late for meetings. Essentially, these taxpayers are taxed an additional amount equal to the pay they lose taking time off work, or pay what amounts to be a social tax by removing by the reproving looks and words of meeting attendees when they disrupt the decorum of the meeting by their late arrival. Finally, if the matter has already been dealt with before they arrive, they have no opportunity to have their point of view heard at the meeting. Let's take a bit of time to examine the burdens a 7 p.m. start time and consistent meeting day would place on our aforementioned winners. Current council members on this committee may have attended Planning and Development Committee meetings previously as council members or as regular citizens. Somehow they found the previous set start time to be acceptable and doable. So a start time of 7 p.m. on a consistent day should work now for them. Further, to work as professional planning staffers, whether in the public or the private sectors, individuals realize they may, by necessity, work outside regular workday hours. By no means should council set bizarre hours like 3 a.m., but it should be guided by reasonable past practice. As Walter Basic said in the May 2nd meeting, in a slightly different context, we have scheduled 2 meetings a month, but it will be basically as required. So if there isn't any business, then there won't be any meeting, but we'll let you know. Under these circumstances, necessary staff would be required to attend and speak at committee meetings only twice a month. However, their appearances at meetings were managed by previous committees and councils. These staff individuals made the necessary accommodations. And again, the town has the opportunity to pay overtime if that's necessary, or to have a later start time for individuals speaking at meetings on those days. So it's something that's entirely doable. Finally, developers would find a way to appear at meetings even if the start time was 3 a.m. Fortunately, we need not ask for an unreasonable time. A 7 p.m. start time will suffice. By reestablishing the Planning and Development Committee, it does not require reinventing the wheel. For context, except in the summer hours, previous committee meetings started at 7 p.m. A 7 p.m. start was ideal because it allowed many working Grimsby residents, and for that matter, committee members, to get home, have a quick meal, collect their thoughts, and still attend the meetings on time. In choosing the date for the bi-monthly meetings, the first Tuesday of each month seemed acceptable to the committee on the 2nd of May. The second meeting day, however, appeared a problematic choice. The upshot was, rather than selecting another Tuesday, which would settle the day, both a day and time, it was decided to make the second day mainly Wednesdays, but possibly Thursdays. More confusion about the day will likely lead to less attendance. Less public participation is exactly the opposite of one of this council's stated goals for this term. The committee claims it wanted to accommodate other committees, especially considering live stream broadcasts are only available in council chambers. On its face, this argument seems a little absurd. Town Hall was wired for fiber optics over 15 years ago. There ought to be no problem with upload capacity in our town hall. There is no reason one or both of the side meeting rooms could not be wired for additional live streaming. Every committee and board does not require the full size of council chambers. Certainly, we could expect staff could arrange for a number of simultaneous live streams. In the end, I'm asking Grimsby Council to lift the May 2nd, 2023 minutes of the Planning and Development Committee. Our community needs a substantial debate about setting meeting times and dates. I recommend meetings be held at 7 p.m. the first and third Tuesdays of every month. The Planning and Development Committee, like no other standing committee, has an immense and a direct impact on how Grimsby lives, looks, and works, both now and in the future. Providing consistency through understanding the context of how the Planning and Development Committee can set times and dates which work for the community, and by applying a little common sense, council will give the 4 stakeholder groups a genuine win, 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 win. Council should accept nothing less. I thank you.
That was very good timing. 10 minutes on the nose.
Perfect.
Thank you for your thank you for your delegation, Stacey. Appreciate it.
Okay.
I'd like to get a mover and a seconder to receive the presentations and delegations so far. Councillor DeFlavio, Councillor Chouat. Oh, sorry. Do I go back? Okay. Councillor DeFlavio.
Related to the aforementioned, the previous presentation by Mr. McNeil, I wasn't at the Planning Development Committee meeting. Was there a reason why the first and third Tuesday of every month wasn't chosen? Was the third Tuesday filled by another meeting? Could somebody answer that question?
I'm going to ask Bonnie to answer because I know the answer, but it was conflicting with so many other different meetings and advisory committees, and there are so many committees and so many meetings that we were trying to work around, and time-wise and day-wise. So I don't know, Bonnie, you want to talk to that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. It was just a matter of trying to get everything to fit. It was really, as I told you when I showed you the calendar, it was really a pile of Legos trying to move them about and trying to find time. And when we met with the planning staff, it kind of, okay, that worked. We wanted it so that the following would be council, and so we played with everything to fit people in. Yes.
Through you, Chair. Well, I have to agree with Mr. McNeil about a few of the things. I think 6 o'clock time is fine, or, if it was somewhere in between for start time. We don't want to give people a chance to get home, but also there's a lot more flexibility now. People can participate via Zoom, so they don't need to come to the council chambers if they don't want to. I do like the consistency of meetings, though, and I agree that there are meetings like standing committees that are not standing committees that don't necessarily need to be in the council chambers. So, if it was something that could, if it's a matter of moving, it's not that. I see nodding heads.
I'll let Bonnie make a comment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, they're not all in the council chambers. We've moved them everywhere, including, I believe, we're going to have some in the Peach King once we get settled. So this is really, that's not the only issue. Yeah, a lot of them where there's a need for this, the ability to Zoom people in. Not all those were, weren't a possibility. So, and some committees really wanted that. So we had to play with, it's actually it's been quite difficult trying to organize it all. Thank you.
Councillor Chouat.
Through you, Chair, just clarification, what was the meeting schedule with the previous council, like time? Was 6 o'clock?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it was 6:30. You talking about Committee of the Whole?
No. For the planning committee.
They set their own time, the first meeting. They had to set their time and at the first meeting.
So if you're talking about the first year of the last council, I can't remember, 6 o'clock, 6, I can remember. But for 3 years as Committee of the Whole, that's where it went, Committee of the Whole.
Oh, right, okay, yes, because I'm looking at some of the meetings and like doesn't look like there's time, okay. Right, okay.
Councillor Fabio.
If I could, Chair, sorry, I think that what Councillor Chouat, I could be misunderstanding, was when it was done with standing committees before. So I could tell you that planning meetings were at 7 o'clock on the first and third Tuesday of the month. I know because I chaired them for more than a decade. Recreation was on Wednesdays. Public Works was on the last Tuesday of the month, I think it was. So, I mean, it was easy to balance because there weren't, so I don't know, all the workings of what's going on with Zoom and all the the cameras, but I know that it wasn't that difficult to balance the schedule. The only thing that ever happened was sometimes recreation came before planning, so I'd have to come straight from a recreation meeting over to a planning meeting. But other than that, we were able to balance it all. So I don't know where the difficulty is balancing, but again, I don't know all of the things that are required to make it work now with the modern system. So I'm using an outdated model in my opinion.
Yes, you are. So, yeah, there's a lot more advisory meetings as well. Things have changed quite a bit since those times, and there's accommodating staff too. There's our staff meetings that need to be. There's so many moving parts in there. I mean, and believe me, it was a long discussion to get to where we were. By changing one meeting, you got to. The staff has to go back and start looking at all the meeting rooms and who's meeting where, when. It's really complicated, and I admire them for their tenacity of trying to put it all together. So, and if there's if the council wants to send this back to be rethought, I mean, that's fine, but I mean, it's up to you to do that. Councillor Sirois.
Through you, Chair. I'm just wondering, Stacey, is there like a middle ground here? Like, because obviously, like Councillor Frick was saying, you know, there are other commitments as well. So this is like how, because I do understand where you're coming from, and I want to make sure that the community has an opportunity to, you know, to give their voice. And so what do you think the middle ground would be here?
Thank you, Councillor Sirois. I think in that set of circumstances, that's up to you to decide. As for me, and you know, Councillor DeFlavio and I butted heads quite often at planning and development meetings, and we're sort of in agreement here that 7 o'clock really did seem to work out well. It gave, just as I said, it gave people an opportunity to sort of collect themselves, have something to eat, and arrive at the meeting. And again, there will be a lot of important meetings that will take a long time. There's no doubt about it, because we're in a community where space to put development is being rapidly depleted, and so everything is going to be a bigger issue now. So I would expect that there are going to be more major meetings, and they might last a little bit longer, but Councillor DeFlavio also knows that there were occasional big meetings that would need to be extended past 11 o'clock, but most of them were taken care of in a timely manner. So what I'm saying is, it's up to you, but reasonable folks need reasonable accommodations, and a 5 o'clock start absolutely doesn't work.
Let me just say this. We lived through 3 years of not having an issue with anybody coming to a meeting because they could come virtually in their car. It was never an issue. But there's more than just the people coming home to Grimsby after work. There's a lot of people who just work in Grimsby. There's a lot of single women, mothers who live in Grimsby. There's a lot of people who prefer to have it earlier. So, I mean, I don't know where your information is coming from, like how you decide that, hey, everybody's going to come home from work and come to a meeting. I don't know if you have stats on that. I don't even have information to back that up. I don't know. I'm just throwing this out there. But I think the world has changed a lot in the last number of years. So anybody can go to a meeting from Venice, if they're in Venice, or if they're in the high school down the street. It is not an issue anymore. It's changed. So I don't know if this is a big an issue as we are trying to make it out to be, but I'm quite willing to send this back to the planning committee for reconsideration, but if that's what you want. But sorry, Bonnie. Councillor DeFlavio.
I do want to add that, you know, in my the 15 years that I was on council, I had young kids for a lot of that time period. And the 7 o'clock time as a parent really worked out well for me because I never missed a dinner with my family. And that was important to me. It allowed for me to have a life. I have dinner and come to the meetings afterwards. And the earlier meetings go right through dinner and take you away from your family more than the later meetings do. I know it seems counterintuitive, but it actually has the opposite effect. When you put them earlier, that time that you would be spending with your family to have dinner, you're spending with us. So I'm fine with that because my kids are growing up now. They don't want to spend time with me. But I'm happy that I had that time when they were young, that we were all able to sit down at the dinner table together every night and eat dinner as a family. So, and I want other people to have that opportunity too. So I'm fine with later times, I'm fine with earlier times. My schedule is very flexible now, but I can tell you that it was a benefit for me to have later meetings as a parent.
Does someone else want to speak? Oh, you're busting, aren't you? You want to speak? Nobody else? So.
Do you want to receive it?
Okay, I'm just going to receive this for now, and I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Howe, Councillor Vardy. Okay. Now, may I have a mover and a seconder to, no, I did not already, sorry. Sorry, wait a myself. Resolve that presentations from Christine Giordani, Stephen Zeus, and as well as a delegation from Stacey McNeil be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you, Stacey. Okay, next item on the agenda is the chair's report from the standing committees, and there is a 5-minute time limit. The meetings were so short, I'm sure you wouldn't need 5 minutes to talk about it. So it starts with the Planning and Development Committee, which I can speak to very quick. Oh, no, actually, Councillor Barazzi is here. He was vice chair, so he can speak to it.
Yes, Chair, thank you. We had a very brief initial meeting. We spoke, as you just heard of, on the time preferred of the regular meetings, which we decided to be 5 o'clock on Tuesdays. And amending our second meeting to accommodate for the opening of the softball or hardball diamond. We also elected Mayor Jordan as the chair of the committee and myself as the vice chair of the committee. And the meeting was kept brief, and that was essentially it, Chair.
And now it's my turn. Very short meeting. Yes. Very, very short meeting. We elected the chair, which was myself, and the vice chair was Councillor Vardy. And we agreed on a time of 12 noon for meetings on the same day as council, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. It was a short meeting. That's it. Thank you. And now we move to Councillor Davoli, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, just similar to our other committees, of course, they were very short. We had an opportunity to meet our lay members, which was great, and to get to know them. I was elected as chair of the Finance Committee. Councillor Charwa is the vice chair of the Finance Committee. And we too set times and dates based upon people's availability as to when those meetings will take place going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. That was nice and short. Okay, we need a councillor there? Oh, Councillor De Flavio.
Thank you, through you, Chair. To the clerk, the heritage minutes are not part of this agenda. I'm assuming they're going to start going through planning the way that they did in the past, and is that why they're not part of the?
Through you, Chair. So the heritage minutes are going to be going, they're confirming with legal right now to see if the proper avenue. So first it's going to the the next Planning and Development Committee meeting. The lawyer, I don't think, has any issue with it going straight to council because it's sort of a statutory committee. We just wanted to cover all of our bases and have it go through planning first until we get that confirmation, but they will also be going to the next council meeting.
Thanks. That's what I assumed. I just wanted to make sure that, because there were designations in that, and I want to make sure that those come through so that we're doing what we need to do to meet those legal requirements. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, I need a mover and a seconder to receive the minutes. Councillor Howell, Councillor Barazzi. Resolved that the following meeting minutes be received. Committee of Adjustment, April the 18th, 2023. Grimsby Public Library Board, February 8, 2023, and April 19, 2023. All in favor? Carried. We now move on to the adoption of previous minutes. Can I have a mover and a seconder to approve the minutes? Councillor DeVoli? Councillor DeFlavio? Resolved that the following meeting minutes be approved. Council of May 1st, 2023. Planning and Development, May 2nd, 2023. Corporate Services Committee, May 4th, 2023. Finance Committee, May 11, 2023. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Next item on the agenda, announcements. Anybody have any announcements? Councillor Shaw.
Through you, Chair, thank you. I just wanted to give a quick announcement about the upcoming Culture Gala. It's the first annual Culture Gala happening on Thursday, June the 8th at 7 p.m. Join us for an evening of live music, tastings, and more in support of the Grimsby Museum, Grimsby Public Art Gallery, and the Grimsby Public Library. And you can purchase your tickets today, and you can get information at grimsbyculturegala.ca, and there's $75 a ticket. So if you need any more information, you can always go to the public library and ask in person as well. Thank you.
Is it changed? Geez, I guess everybody's had a boring few weeks. Okay, thank you. Next up is consent reports. A mover and a seconder to receive the consent report. Councillor Shaw, Councillor Barazzi. Resolved that council hereby approve the following item and that the consent item be approved on the recommendation as contained therein. TC 2309-22 to 2022, resolve that report TC-2309-2022 municipal and school board elections notice of default dated May 15, 2023 be received for information. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next item is discussion reports. And I believe we have Sarah Sweeney to give us a background and some information on this report. It's the budget amendment for the Casablanca Waterfront Park construction. Sarah, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. And this evening, I also have with me Mike Grable, our Parks and Facilities Manager, and we also have Brad Smith, who is the Safarian Design Group lead, and the two of them have been leading this project. So we're here tonight hoping to move this project forward. We have done a tender again for the Casablanca Waterfront Park. And when we just got those tenders very recently, I believe it was last week, the low bid has come over the budget that we have. So we are seeking a budget amendment to allow this project to proceed. And that additional fund would come from the Parkland Dedication Reserve. We're really hoping to move this project forward soon. I know the community is very eager and anticipating what's to come, and there's some really great pieces in this project. that really addressed some of the key things that we heard from the community that they wanted. They really wanted to make sure they had improved access to the waterfront, improved access to trails, accessibility as well down there. So we're excited to say part of this project is fully accessing the waterfront, including our first beach mat in the community, so that's exciting. And many other features as well, including lighting along the pathway, a water fountain, which is, again, a first for us in our community, and then the washroom, change room complex as well as a part of this project. So I think everybody's fairly or somewhat familiar with the project, so we'll open it up to questions, and then Brad or Mike may field some of them as well.
Councillor Kristanji.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Will the community playground be fully accessible as well?
Mike, do you want to respond?
Yes. Good evening, Councillor. Yes, the playground will be fully accessible.
Great, thank you, Mike.
Councillor, I'm not sure which one. Councillor Shara, okay.
Through you, Chair, thank you. Okay, two questions. First one, just so I know about the process, is there like some kind of a clause there as far as like how much of an increase can happen on these projects? Like, I don't understand how all of these tenders just balloon, and I understand inflation, but is there a limit? Like, is there some kind of clause that tells us what the limit is?
So when we prepare, sorry, through you, Chair. So when we prepare this, they prepare it on their best estimates, and that's been very tricky because estimates have been changing greatly in the field. So we did rely on Brad and his team as well, and they prepare an estimate, but ultimately the people who bid the pricing that they feel is appropriate for the project. So that's the number you get. Any project that we have, of course, we do also build a contingency in there. Our hope is never to use all of it, but there is something in there as well to make sure that we're ready to deal with any issues that arise as we go along.
Okay, and in this, you had said that some of the amenities needed to be taken out. I'm just wondering what the reductions were from the original design. It's not mentioned in the report.
Sure. Mike, do you want to answer, or I can?
Maybe Brad would be better off answering this one, if that's okay.
Sure, of course. Thank you, Councillor. The reductions that we looked at from the first tender to this tender was, I'll just kind of move east to west. The east side, where the washroom is staying virtually the same. We eliminated one of the staircases. The Armorstone staircase is still fully accessible down to the beach, but just save some cost on an Armorstone staircase. We did the same with the phase 2, the second phase, that's just east of the pedestrian bridge. Everything north of the existing asphalt trail we deleted, so the curved walkway down to the beach, we retained that as is, which significantly would reduce cost, just eliminating some of the Armorstone walls. And then on the far west side of the park, we virtually eliminated the playground, the wood boardwalk, and most of the landscape amenities on that side of the park, focusing more just on the west side of the park. Does that help?
Yes, that's good, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor De Flavio.
Thank you, Chair, through you. So I looked at the portfolio for the group that is being recommended, the Oak Ridges Group, and their commercial projects. It's lovely, but there's not really anything of this scale and this size in that portfolio. So it's, I don't know how it works, and I've been through this before, but how do we ensure that they're capable of doing the job, that they are a company that has the capability of doing something this big? Because, I see like small parkettes and some landscaping that they've done before, and, like it looks like a stage of some sort. Excuse me, but this is a huge project, millions of dollars, and I don't see anything like that in their portfolio. I'm sure that this will be a lovely addition to their portfolio, but I want to make sure that they're capable of doing it. How do we ensure that they're capable of doing the project, I guess is the question.
Through the chair, I would ask Brad to respond to that.
Absolutely. That's an excellent question, and I appreciate the concern. I can say I can't speak to how Oak Ridge landscape contractors would manage their website or update their website. I mean, websites take a lot of work, but we've been working with our firm has been working with Oak Ridge Landscape since they started in 1992. I've been working with them for the on and off for the last 10 years. I can tell you that they recently completed Confederation Park in Stony Creek. They've done some work at the Brock University Monument. They've done the Casablanca Winery, Casablanca Corporate Center. For us, they've done the Waterdown Memorial Park in Hamilton, which is, I think, just a little over $2 million. They also did the Pillar and the Post Garden Expansion Project for our team, which was, I think that was a little, just under $6 million worth of work. So they're very capable. They have 3 active projects on the go right now within our portfolio in our office. So, yeah, I mean, everything they do and have done isn't necessarily on their website, but they, without question, would be able to handle large park work. They do a lot of park work for the city of Hamilton as well. So I have full confidence in their team to do the work. I'd be lying if I said I didn't do a little fist bump when they were the low bid. We work quite well with them, and they're a great group.
Thank you. That makes me feel a lot better because, and you should tell them to update their website. They should show off these projects. I'm familiar with a few of the ones that you're talking about, and they're underselling themselves then because I looked at, well, no, I don't mean as far as value is concerned. I'm talking about, I think that there are some, the bidding process and the way it works, and sometimes you get lottery bids in there and there's clearly one in there that is one of those bids that is, maybe we'll get it, and if we do that, then we'll make some money off this project. And I'm glad that we had reasonable bids, and I'm fine with taking money out of the other area to fund it. Thanks.
Councillor Davoli.
Thank you, Chair Frigg. A question to Sarah, and it was a question I had earlier, but I really would like you to share your answer with all of council. And so my question to you earlier had been, how does the design in this park adapt to climate change, to either, increased lake levels, to any of the issues that we see going forward? And I think it would be really great to hear your answer here at the council chambers. That's my first question.
Sure, through the chair. So if you recall, when we did have those high lake water levels, we actually experienced it in the park very much as it exists now. So we actually have a sense of exactly how it's going to look because we've seen it. And while there was, some work to do cleanup overall, we found that the heights of the walls, et cetera, were sufficient. And Brad can confirm as well, all that's remaining. So we do feel that, well, I can't say there would be no impact. We do feel that it would be fairly minimal. In terms of other factors, we are trying to make sure we're conscious about our design choices and elements that we're going to use. Certainly making sure shade is in a good factor in that park. It's something we heard often. Trees would be a part of that, but so would shade structures. So even having the pavilion, a pergola area for seating, because we hear that loud and clear as well, that's important as you go forward with our park system as well. I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, Brad?
No, the only other thing I'd add is in terms of the plant palette, we've tried to spec native plants where possible. We've minimized, just to build on what Sarah said, in terms of shade structures. A lot of the shade structures are coming from Stony Creek supplier, so minimizing demand on trucking costs and whatnot. We've also tried to use recycled materials where we can, and as I said before, really look at exploring a native plant palette.
Thank you. That was my first question. My second question is not so much to you, I guess, as it is to process, and I'm not so sure who this question is to. But when we set the terms of reference for our various standing committees, the Finance Committee's terms of reference said that we would deal with all in-year budget amendments and all matters that increase the approved budget, which this would be an example of. And so my question to all of us, and I know we're going to run into this again and again and again as we learn to work with standing committees, though, but I guess, issues like this, and I truly get that they arise through the Recreation Parks function, but at the same time, I see our finance director signing off on it, but on the other hand, we decided as a council that the terms of reference would be that finance would also deal with increased budget amendments. And so, it is what it is. I guess it's an example to learn by today and tonight. But I would really like to see these sorts of examples also come to finance, given that that was what we thought should be the terms of reference of the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Bonnie's going to speak a little bit to that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. What we've done is where budget was set by council last term, so any of these amendments are going to be made by council, anything that was set last term. Sorry? Oh, sorry.
We have another clerk.
Just to kind of go off of that, so the reports that have gone to council, so this wouldn't have gone to the standing committee yet, it's seeking additional budget, correct? So that's why it's coming back to council. So any sort of budget amendments, things like that, because it was approved by council, then that's, or sorry, budget committee of the whole, yeah.
If I could add to that, though, I mean, every single amount in our budget was approved at the Committee of the Whole. So if we follow that philosophy or that theory, that if it's approved at the Committee of the Whole, then it would always go back to the Committee of the Whole, and then this entire term of reference, this I'll call it duty and responsibility of the Finance Committee, then would make no sense, right? So I really can only say that I think it's something we need to think about. Tonight is fine, and we will move on with this, but it's something we're going to have to agonize and stick handle through as we figure out which committee and who and what the process is.
Bonnie?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just to clarify, what we thought was fair to some of the people who knew nothing about the main project, asking them to vote on something that we kind of looked at it and said, these are big issues, big dollar amounts, maybe it should go back to the people that voted on the project originally. So that's just to clarify. We thought giving it to people who have not been on the committee before or heard about the project or understand it at the same level. That's what we were thinking. But you've given us food for thought. Certainly, Councillor will take that back, for sure. I promise.
That's what I was suggesting. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Howe?
Through you, Chair. The devil's in the details always. In the 5th page, under the operating budget impact, and this is for council, kind of get your heads around, because this is going to be a very large consideration come your next budget, because the wages right now, the labor crew is probably shy, somewhere between 2 and 4 people, trying to maintain our parks and trying to maintain our town from the community services side of things. But as it says right here, impacts such as wages, okay, that's going to have to be increased people to do the job and to keep it looking like this premier place and destination we want to be. Materials, utilities, contracted services. The bathroom, we've got the full service bathroom. That will not, it's not just a look at the building and it takes care of itself. If you've ever done janitorial work, and it's ongoing. So it's not going to be a cheap building to run and to maintain and to keep open. the others, in the conclusions, we talk about, being a beautiful waterfront and attracting people. Where are you going to park them? Right now, we got parking issues. Where are we going to park them? We haven't seen that. And unfortunately, community services kind of, got saddled with this dream, but we got to park them someplace when they come. So tell me, how we're going to deal with it. So we do have issues coming with having this beautiful premier park along the water. So let's be ready for it next year. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, could I get a mover and a seconder to approve the recommendations contained in the report? Councilor DeFlavio? Councilor Barazzi? Resolve that report DRS 23-13, budget amendment, Casablanca Waterfront Park construction, RFT 2023-03CS, dated May 15, 2023 be received, and that council approve additional funding of $241,054 to be refunded from the Parkland Dedication Reserve, and that council approve the total project budget for the Casablanca Waterfront Park at a revised project total of $4,341,054. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
Could I get a mover and seconder to receive the correspondence? Councillor Howe, Councillor Shawa. Resolved that the following correspondence be received. Good Citizenship Day Proclamation, Brain Tumor Awareness Month Proclamation, MPAC Annual Report, Town of Lincoln, Great Lakes, and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative, and the memo Summer Meeting Schedule. All in favor? Carried. I need a mover and seconder for the Good Citizenship Day Proclamation. Councillor Stanji, Councillor Vardy. Okay. Whereas good citizenship enhances and enriches the lives of all members of our community, and whereas acts of good citizenship affect every aspect of life in Grimsby, including social problems, education, creativity, and community livability, and whereas in 1998, the Brandy Elliott Education Projects was created in Brandy Elliott's memory to inspire youth to contribute to society. Throughout her short life, Brandy demonstrated that young people can make a difference by contributing to the town of Grimsby, the nation, and the world in significant ways. And whereas the Brandy Elliott Education Projects is dedicated to assisting children and youth to actualize their individual potential while fostering a spirit of service to society. And whereas the mayor, town council members, and all residents in the town of Grimsby are encouraged to make a difference no matter how great or how small. Let us use our rich cultural diversity, our talents and wisdom to join in a collective spirit of service and make a difference in a community that is so meaningful to us. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Deputy Mayor Reg Frake, do proclaim June 7, 2023 as Good Citizenship Day and urge Grimsby residents to participate in and celebrate our strong social fabric created through good citizenship. All in favor? Carried? Okay. Now may I have a mover and a seconder for the Brain Tumor Awareness Month Proclamation? Councillor DeFlavio, Councillor Vardy. Whereas the causes of and cure for brain tumors are unknown, and early detection and treatment is vital to prolonged and improved survival. And whereas brain tumors strike people of all ages, from newborns to seniors, crossing all economic, social, and ethnic boundaries, and whereas brain tumors are the most common cause of solid cancer death in children and young adults, and whereas the Brain Tumor Registry of Canada is needed to know the number of Canadian children and adults diagnosed every day, and whereas the mission of Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada is to reach every Canadian affected by brain tumors through support, education, information, and research. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Deputy Mayor Reg Frake, proclaim May 2023 as Brain Tumor Awareness Month. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And can I get a mover and seconder to approve the meeting time for Council's summer schedule? Councilor Bratzi, Councilor Howe. Resolved that Council meet at 5:30 p.m. for its meetings on June 5th, July 4th, and August the 8th, 2023. All in favor? Carried. Regional Council, that's not here, okay. Oh, okay.
Not just yet, sorry. You just have to go through this and then that.
Okay. Okay, the next council meeting will be held on June 5th, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. Now I need, this is it here?
Yeah, move and second. Yeah, just a move and seconder for the bylaw.
Okay, need a mover and seconder for the bylaw. Councillor Shaw, Councillor Howe. Resolve that leave be given to introduce bylaw 23-46 and that the same be read a first time, considered and passed. All in favor? Carried. Is that it?
Just do it. During the meeting. It was there. Just adjourn.
Okay, that's it. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. And good night. Thank you for